Hey guys, so today I'm doing a spoiler-free review on this book called The Fat Man by Maurice. Maurice is a really well-known New Zealand author. He wrote one of my favourite childhood books called Under the Mountain. I really love that one. It's a really fun little like fantasy story. This one I'd never read as a child. I think it's meant to be like middle grade kind of thing because that's the age of the main character. I talked about this when I hauled this book, but the cover of this is like super creepy. I just think that like expression on his face kind of says it all, and there's this really creepy house on the back cover as well. So this book is about a boy named Colin, and Colin lives in a small town in New Zealand close to Auckland in the 1930s, and one day he's down playing by the creek and comes across this really fat man swimming in the creek, and while the man's in the water he goes to the man's stuff and steals a chocolate bar. Unfortunately, he gets caught doing that by the fat man and is punished really badly for it. He ends up being forced to burgle a house with this guy, and then has nightmares about it for ages afterwards. And then to Colin's horror, the fat man starts kind of sneaking his way into Colin's life and like inserting himself into Colin's family and that kind of thing, and getting involved and messing with all of their lives. And of course Colin hasn't told his parents what happened because he's scared of getting in trouble for burgling the house, even though it wasn't his fault obviously. But yeah, his family has no idea who the fat man is and like why Colin hates him so much. And yeah, for something that's I think meant to be middle grade fiction, it was way darker than I expected it to be. I was expecting a story that was maybe like a little bit creepy but kind of lighthearted, like you know, Roald Dahl, like his books. They're aimed at kids. They do have really like menacing elements to them, like for example Matilda, her parents are horrible, and the headmistress at her school and everything is like really nasty, but the story is still like lighthearted and fun. This one though was just dark through and through. Like it was really dark. To be fair, it's described on the back as a thriller, which I actually didn't realize. I hadn't read that going into this book, so I didn't realize it was meant to be a thriller, but it was definitely like a really gritty kind of thriller, not like a fun one like Goosebumps or something. It was definitely like, it felt more like an adult book to me. And so I'd say going into this book, if you're uncomfortable reading about family violence or domestic violence or bullying, things like along those lines, I would avoid this book if I were you, just because there's a lot of that. That's kind of what the whole story revolves around. In terms of the writing style of this book, I wasn't a huge fan of it because it's one of those stories where it's narrated in third person with an omniscient narrator, so the narrator like knows everything, knows more than like the characters. It kind of follows Colin's point of view, but the narrator like knows more than Colin does. I feel like that's something that's common in children's literature, but it kind of took away from the suspense for me because the narrator kept doing things like skipping ahead and spoiling things that were going to happen, and then being like, oh no, I'm getting ahead of myself, like let's get back to what we were talking about. And I just found that like ruined the story a little bit. It just kind of spoiled things. So yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of that kind of storytelling. And also, as kind of typical to children's literature, the parents in this book are dumb. Like Colin's parents make so many stupid decisions. I think his dad is actually like a really lovable kind of dad character. I think he's like a good father figure and things, but he is really caught up on the idea of making a quick buck and kind of makes some really stupid decisions that probably would have been going like completely against his gut instinct, but he would do these things anyway. It was just crazy. And then Colin's mother, on the other hand, is made out to be like quite nasty, just a nasty, like mean kind of person. And that's honestly something I've seen before in Maurice's work. I read In My Father's Den by him, which is an adult fiction book, but the character in that has a similar kind of relationship with his parents. So he's got a mother and a father. The father's like really lovable and the mother's like made out to be really nasty. So yeah, interesting to see that in another book by Maurice as well. However, the mum, even though she's nasty, she at least does have an inkling that something's not right, so at least she's like a little bit more onto it than Colin's dad was. Colin as a protagonist, I quite liked him. He was really sort of a bit wise beyond his years. Like he was realistically a child, like he was scared at times and a bit naive and things, but he had moments of wisdom, especially as compared to his parents. Like he was way more onto it than they were, and he was really brave as well. There were moments when he stood up against bullying and things like that, so I think that was a really nice element of the story. The fat man obviously is a horrible character. He is just all around like honestly probably one of the most like evil characters I've ever read. There was nothing redeeming about him. You learn a little bit about his backstory, but I personally don't think his backstory was enough to justify how he treated everyone that he knew. He was just pure evil. Overall, this book, I wouldn't say it was bad, it wasn't what I was expecting, so I really didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. If I'm honest, it was more of like a depressing kind of thriller rather than like a fun, like fast-paced kind of thriller, which is what I thought this was going to be. Funnily enough, it was actually set during the Great Depression as well, obviously, so the family is like going through hard times and everything, which kind of contributes to, I guess, why they would allow the things that happened to happen, because they were all kind of in a desperate situation financially. I kind of just didn't really get the point of what the author was trying to say with this book. Like, obviously there is that stuff about like Colin standing up against bullying and all that kind of thing, but it had a very like ambiguous kind of ending, and I don't really understand what the author was trying to say, because I think the character of the fat man was really, really evil and horrible and nasty. I just don't understand. Like, we hear these bits of his backstory that I guess maybe are supposed to make us feel sorry for him. The thriller aspect of it was dulled down by the narration style, so I wouldn't say it was, oh, there's no message because it's purely meant to be a thriller. Like, I think the author was trying to get at something, I just didn't quite understand what it was. And yeah, that's another similarity to In My Father's Den. In My Father's Den is also a bit of a thriller, but just lacks that like anticipation that you normally get with other thrillers. Like, it's a thriller but you're kind of just cruising along. It's really weird, and then that had a really ambiguous ending as well. So I found this one really, really similar. I think if you enjoy stories about family relationships, you might like this one, because that was kind of the main focus of this. Even though it is a bit of a thriller, I think the focus is more on Colin's relationship with his parents and with his grandparents, and the fat man's relationship with his own family. That's the other thing with this book. I refer to him as the fat man because that's how Colin refers to him in the book the whole way through. So that's what you know his character is, but I just kind of feel like it like demonizes bigger people a little bit. That's it for this video. If you want to follow me on Goodreads to keep up with what I'm reading, you can friend me on Goodreads. It's always linked down below, as well as my Instagram and my Twitter. And yeah, I'll see you guys with another video in a couple days. Bye.